my fellow Americans, in this poignant hour, I ask you to join with me in prayer. Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. Lead them straight and true. Give strength to their arms, stoutness to their hearts, steadfastness in their faith. They will need thy blessings. Their road will be long and hard. For the enemy is strong. He may hurl back our forces, but we shall return again and again. The darkness will be rent by noise and flame. Men's souls will be shaken with the violences of war. Some will never return.
Well, we chased everyone away with that. Hello, my name is Commander 401, and welcome to my channel. We're going to be doing a review of Don't Be a Sucker. Can you hear me, Brainless?
Yeah, sorry. I I had the stream running in the background, so I got an echo, so I got confused. My pure
the intro chased everyone away, so we best get going with the main thing.
Nah.
I'll do Ukraine stream, and then that will work out. We thought we chased you away with the intro, everybody.
Nah, probably
All
not.
right. So what we're going to do is we're going to be reviewing a 1947 War Department film concerning propaganda used by a guest who started the war a few years just before. And we're going to explore its relevance for today. So, Brainless, you want to get started?
Well, yeah. Show us what you got. Like, I'm not that well known with this, so. Some perfect acting.
This looks like a fake, doesn't it? Well, it is a fake. But here's a fella who's willing to bet his hard-earned money on it. Henry here got on the train with $200. He couldn't see any harm in a friendly game of cards. What if the other men were strangers? And take Joe Collins. He's got a nice wife at home. But he met this girl at the bar, and she looked kinda cute after the first couple of drinks. There's a good old-fashioned word for people like this. We call them suckers. And there are other people. People who stay up nights figuring out how to take away what they've got. There are all kinds of games and all kinds of suckers. Take Mike here, for instance. He's got everything, you might say. He's young, he's healthy, he's got a job, and he's got a country called America. It's a wonderful thing to have. America. Lots of room. Room enough to raise plenty of food. Big factories to make things a man can use. Big cities to do the business of a big country. And people. Lots of people. Enough to work the farm and build the factories, dig the mines, and run the business. All kinds of people. People from different countries with different religions, different colored skins. Free people. They can live together and work together and build America together because they're free. Free to vote, to say what they pleased, go to their own churches, to pick their own jobs. Yeah, Mike's got something, all right. He's got America. But there are guys who stay up nights figuring out how to take that away from him.
Yes, there are. Back in those days, you had people who were sympathetic to Bad Mustache Man. And they started a little group called America First. And believe it or not, Charles Lindbergh, the guy who flew the Spirit of St. Louis, who was a national hero to everyone up until he opened his fat yap and started flapping Nazi bullshit.
And despite the propaganda and confusion of recent months, it is now obvious that England is losing the war. I believe and I have been forced to the conclusion that we cannot win this war for England regardless of how much assistance we send. That is why the America First Committee has been formed.
Those are the same people in America who are screaming America First, where they want to make friends with Putler. And they are scheming to take that very special thing called America, or that very special thing called the Netherlands or NATO, away from all of us. This is Nick Fuentes. He helped found the America First movement.
And it sucks, and it is what it is, but that's why we need dictatorship. That's unironically why we need to get rid of all that. We need to take control of the media or take control of the government and force the people to believe what we believe, or force them to play by our rules and reshape the society.
Yep. And the blaming that was done way back when.
In selecting these three groups as the major agitators for war, I have included only those whose support is essential to the war party. If any of these groups, the British, the Jewish, or the administration, stops agitating for war, I believe there will be little danger of our involvement.
Yep. That was the thing that really got everyone to hate him. He didn't actually, they wouldn't let him near the European theater. They wouldn't let him near the military, period. They gave him a little probation to go out in the Pacific. And then he repented of his eugenics, racial bullshit, only after Harry S. Truman said, well, we're going to send you to a V2 factory. And then he thought they were sending him to the V2 factory to look at the rockets. And then the MPs shoved his face into a pile of human skulls. And he finally got the message. But that is the legacy of the people who want to take our democracies and NATO and everything away from us. We're going to do part 2 now.
I want to give you the truth, folks. The truth about America. I know you've got a lot of questions. You want to know why you're not getting the breaks you deserve. Well, I'm not a politician, But I've made it my business to study these things, and I happen to know the facts. Now, friends, I'm just an average American. But I'm an American, and some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. I see people with foreign accents making all the money. I see Negroes holding jobs that belong to me and you. Now I ask you, if we allow this thing to go on, what's going to become of us real Americans?
I've heard this kind of talk before, but I never expected to hear it in America.
This fellow seems to know what he's talking about.
Yes, he knows all right.
What's the answer? What are we real Americans going to do about it? You'll find it right here in this little pamphlet. The truth about Negroes and foreigners. The truth about the Catholic Church. Now, friends, these books are free. Paid for by real Americans who want others to know the truth.
Excuse me, young man, but are you actually going to read that stuff?
Sure, why not? You heard what he said, didn't you?
Yes, I heard. But do you believe in that kind of talk?
I don't know, makes pretty good sense to me.
It makes pretty good sense to everyone until they are the group that winds up getting the shaft. It really does. You have people talking about these are the real Americans. These are the people that are not supposed to be American.
Yeah,
As someone with a Jewish family history, I can empathize with minorities and people who are not typical.
and the thing that I found so funny was like, what was one of the things that they praised America for in this video? It's diversity. Like, yeah, you want to make America great again, then let's reintegrate all that diversity.
Do you know that the president of my mom's high school was Al Downing? They lived in the Berg, and there was Jews. It was mostly Italian, but there was Jews in the Berg. There was just my mom had black neighbors, and family losing almost everyone in Europe who remained after the war. You kind of don't want to be crap to people. It's just not a good thing. And everyone's rights here are at stake. Now, one of the things Hitler did, right, is he took, and we're going to get to this, where we're going to show some of the Trump prophets and the false prophets basically shilling for Putin. Now, there are some people who are socially conservative, and they think the whole world revolves around the God, gays, guns, and abortions. Now, as far as me personally, I could pray with anyone that women would choose to have their kids. I'm just not going to take that choice away. Pregnancy and other things of that nature are so complicated. You have ectopic pregnancies. You have all kinds of things where the mother could die. You have other times where the baby is not viable. And to have politicians be making those calls, in other words, I'm not particularly for, having them, but I think that they need to be legal. And I can basically say that.
Nobody is pro-abortion. Nobody is pro-abortion. But there's a lot of people, most people are pro-choice. Because there's just times that you need it. Even if it's just mentally that you're saying, like, I'm not ready to be a parent. Like, yeah.
That's the thing. And then you have, let's, Hitler's position on abortion was he basically wanted to get rid of most of them. The only people who he would be allowed to do it were people who he wanted to kill anyway. So that's bad. And then he was against the Social Democrats of the Weimar Republic were going to decriminalize homosexuality, and that was one of Hitler's harping points. They had the Nazi Vatican Concord, where basically the Protestants did similar things. Now, there were preachers who stood up for the truth, and Hitler killed them, but they literally said, we're going to support this politician here, the bad mustache man, and in return, the bad mustache man is supposed to provide religious freedom. Well, that didn't work out. And what those churches did in the beginning was they took away people's freedom to join the church. Because they didn't support Hitler. So it's really a sticky wicket.
I'm speaking to you as an American. And I tell you, friends, we'll never be able to call this country our own until it's a country without. Without what?
Yeah, without what?
Without Negroes. Without alien foreigners. Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know these people.
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason. Hey, that fella's talking about me.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
These are your enemies. These are the people who are trying to take over our country. Now you know them. You know what they stand for. And it's up to you and me to fight them. Fight them and destroy them before they destroy us. Thank you.
Notice he really didn't give any reasons as to why these people were the enemies. He just made the accusation. He's not doing a very good job of making any arguments because he literally has nothing besides lies.
Yeah, the only thing he said, like, oh, they got our jobs. Oh, and people with foreign accents have more money than me. Yeah, then you should work harder. And
yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Bible verses is when Moses says, if you mistreat the widows, the fatherless, and the alien, and they cry out to me, I'll hear their cry and make your wives widows and your children fatherless. I'm a God of compassion. On the front of that doesn't seem very much compassion, but there's like the expectation you will care, or one day the badness will come around to you and you'll learn how to care the hard way. So it's best to actually care right now. And one of the things that is missing, especially amongst evangelicals in America, if I'm remembering the scripture correctly, is there's supposed to be proofs. Love, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control and faithfulness, if I remember correctly. And there's just all this anger, and the more anger and the more hatred you get, the more people just get pushed away. And it's like a never-ending feedback loop.
Before he said Masons, you were ready to agree with him.
Well, yes, but he was talking about, what about those other people?
But in this country, we have no other people. We are American people, all of us.
What about you? You aren't American, are you?
I was born in Hungary, but now I am an American citizen. And I have seen what this kind of talk can do. I saw it in Berlin.
What were you doing there?
I was a professor at the university. I heard the same words we have heard today. But I was a fool then. I thought Nazis were crazy people, stupid fanatics.
Yep, and they are
Yep.
stupid fanatics. It's just that they're really good at manipulating people. Believe it or not, the book that Hitler got most of his crappy ideas was called The Antichrist. It literally is the most anti-Christian book I have ever come across. It takes all the positive things about Christianity, which a lot of atheists that I know would say, yeah, positive, care about the poor, turn the other cheek, love thy neighbor. And it basically rejects all of that. that's where the idea of the Superman comes in. And it's not a good, it's like taking the law of the jungle and making it for human society. And no evolutionary scientists that I know of, even though they advocate for the theory, they don't advocate that human society should actually be built on it, you know, because human beings do not flourish in the you must be strong like bull, like ox, like bear. You'll never realize your true strength until you're fighting to survive. It just doesn't work. That's the shit of the Soviet
But
Union.
unfortunately, it was not so. You see, they knew that they were not strong enough to conquer a unified country. So they split Germany into small groups. They used prejudice as a practical weapon to cripple the nation. Of course, that was not easy to do. They had to work hard to do it. You see, we human beings are not born with prejudices. Always they are made for us, made by someone who wants something. Remember that when you hear this kind of talk. Somebody is going to get something out of it, and it isn't going to be you. This is not classroom theory. I saw it happen.
Yep, it did happen. And yeah, Al, you're right.
Yeah.
Kent Hovind, it wasn't even 60 days out of prison, and he was selling Laetrile to cancer patients. If you don't know what Laetrile is, it's basically cyanide to cancer patients. That man is an awful piece of nonsense right there. Yeah, I don't think he prophesies falsely. I'm not sure because I don't follow him because he's not really worth my time. But he's blatantly dishonest.
I saw it first in Berlin in 1932. 5 young men that I knew were standing in the crowd listening to the Nazi speaker. Eric was a Catholic. Anton, a student of mine, was a Jew. Heinrich owned a small hardware store. Karl was a farmer. And Hans was an unemployed metal worker.
I actually just cut that because the next part of this, I'm going to have to lower the volume halfway through for the algorithm.
One by one, he attacked each minority and he split them off one from the other. These men were all fellow Germans when they came here today. Now they were split into rival groups, suspicious of each other, hating each other. They were being swindled, all of them. But the man who was really being fooled was Hans. He was pure German, according to Nazi standards. To him they promised everything, and he fell for it.
You who are true Aryan.
And basically he's going down his racial BS hole, and he's promising him everything just because of who he is, that he has an entitlement to basically rule the world because he was born a certain way.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where I don't trust the algorithm to decipher.
With this one, yeah.
But see, these shysters, they always have a mark. And it's always a group that can get them over the top to take over the country. Just a little bit over. And guess who's the mark in the United States? The mark is different depending upon the other what country you're in. But it's basically because there is so much fear and so much fear of persecution within the framework of Christianity. They literally want to be persecuted. I remember looking at a preacher that I basically it was about a week before the election, 2012, and I was there for a friend who wanted to be a preacher, and it was one of these churches where you didn't need a college degree, probably. But anyway, I looked over to him and I said, Paul Ryan's favorite philosopher was Ayn Rand, and her books were endorsed by the Church of Satan out of San Francisco in the late 60s. I know what's going on here because no Democrat would be allowed to get away with that. You don't know how to grow your religion without exploding your political movement. Because if you don't have half the country being the godless menace you want them to be, then you can't motivate the plebs to go to the polls. And it's true, because when Howard Dean did the outreach to the evangelicals, he sucked the energy right out of the Republican base. And then they needed to go to the philosophies of a woman who compared Christians to communists in order to get the evangelicals, just riled up. And they riled them up to the point where they lost their minds. And I wish that they would have their minds back. And I know that most of my subs are atheists, but I pray every day I would rather have their minds back than wind up going down the dark road.
Would you recommend young men to tan their balls?
To what?
Once a society collapses, then you're in hard times. Well, hard iron sharpens iron, as they say, and those hard times inevitably produce men who are tough, men who are resourceful, men who are strong enough to survive. And then they go on to re-establish order, and so the cycle begins again.
Just think of how much bullshit people need to be full of to think there's going to be an end of men and that they're being persecuted and that they need to tan their balls.
Yeah, and sorry, but this makes me think he's gay.
Yeah, it's kind of giving off that vibe, but this is the ridiculousness of all of the propaganda that if you are a white male Christian but you are not a jerk, then no one hates you.
No.
I mean, Brainless Steel, you're an atheist. Do you have ill will towards Christians who don't run around spreading hate?
No. No. With that, I think I said that a couple of days back on Slimstream. I'm all for freedom of religion. And that's what I mean. Freedom of religion. You can believe whatever the fuck you want. Just don't. You can tell other people about it, but don't try and force it on them. And yeah.
And I remember when they were talking about the microchip, you were kind of like saying, no, the bodily autonomy. What you were going at was you knew that there would be a lot of religious folks who really wouldn't like that, and they would react to it, and you were being sensitive to their feelings.
Yeah, and even people that, even if it's normal, there will always be people that don't want to, that think it's scary, or for whatever. It could be a mental thing, oh yeah, I don't want something under my skin, just like some autistic people just cannot have certain fibers in their clothes because it triggers them. just stupid things like that. Like, yeah, when it comes to your body, I think you should always have a choice.
And if you are religious, I want you to consider this. I'm talking towards anyone who would watch this. It was the founder of the Rhode Island colony of Rhode Island. He basically talked about the conversions the Catholic churches were doing in Latin America, where people were being lined up and forced to accept a religion that was never articulated to them, that they did not understand. And basically, he was talking about it being more or less turning them into Spaniards rather than Christians. And he called it conversions of the Antichrist. And Roger Williams, he also realized, because he was the most Puritan of Puritans, believed in Calvinism, that there in Calvinism says whether it's God's sovereign choice whether or not you go to heaven, and you can't force anything. So he reasoned, if I can't force anything, why am I making everyone miserable if there's nothing I can do to move them towards the religion? And as someone who has been involved in Christianity, I can basically say, if you sit there and you beat me, or psychologically, or you treat me like I'm an idiot, it's just insulting, because I know more about the New Testament than a lot of Christians I run into, sadly. And this is for the benefit of, again, anyone who comes to this stream later, because the Nazis were promising Hitler was promising to make Germany a Christian nation, and he made it anything but.
That's how Hans became a Superman. They gave him a uniform and they pumped up his ego. He wasn't just a little fellow out of work anymore. He was a member of the master race. His wife couldn't quite understand. Even though he was a Superman, there wasn't any food in the house. Stupid woman. Didn't she realize that the Nazis were going to make jobs for everybody? There would be plenty of food and clothing and a new house. Everything they wanted. The glorious future of Germany was to be theirs, and their children would someday rule the world. But his wife, silly woman, still wondered where the next meal was coming from. Hans didn't like that kind of talk. It was dangerous. For that kind of talk, people should be put in jail. Hans had swallowed the bait all right. And these were the men who baited the hook. Why? So that Hans could come to power? Of course not. So they could come to power. They would merely use Hans to help them get there. He would do the dirty work for them. Hans and thousands of others like him, all playing a sucker's game. They gambled with other people's liberty, and of course they lost their own. A nation of suckers. Hitler needed these people. There was lots of work to be done.
Yep. And don't you notice how when Trump's being charged, right? Now, I worked at multiple defense contractors. If I treated non-classified defense-related blueprints the way he treated nuclear secrets, I wouldn't be here. I would still be in prison. And he's saying, I'm taking these slings and arrows for you, Mr. Evangelical. No, he's basically being charged with crimes that he has committed. And what a lot of religious folks aren't realizing is Trump's not fighting evil. He's fighting people who question him and who criticize him. And just like with Hitler, once he no longer needs you, he'll spin you around, poke you in the rear. Because remember, the Nazi ideology comes from a book called The Antichrist. And the word the prophet Daniel used in the original Hebrew, all right, for that little horn is Karen. And what does Donald Trump fill people with better than anything else? A spirit of being a Karen. And I just had to land that.
Yeah. And like what you said about the people being a mark, like the other day, I think it was like a month-old video on YouTube, but somebody covered a Trump YouTube streamer or something like that, or podcaster or whatever, and like live on stream, that dude started to realize, fuck it, I'm the mark. That was such a beautiful thing to see. Like that,
Yeah.
that he was like, fuck, I'm in a cult.
And
Like
that's awesome when anyone's realizes that, because
yeah,
then they're no longer contributing to that evil.
yeah. I thought that was quite interesting to see. But yeah, sadly, not enough people don't see that.
And there's this huge thing with all these false prophets, all these Trump prophets. And I'm going to cover two of them, Michael Flynn and Robin Bullocks. There's just so much. There's video of Lance Wallnew shilling for Putin. There's basically, if they prophesied that Trump was going to be president, they shield for Putin, which gives you an idea of which side, if you're an atheist or you're a theist or you're a Christian, let's just say that for argument's sake, there's a good side and an evil side. You know, they're shilling for the evil side. My grandfather told me this was when they had that coup against Gorbachev in the early 90s, where the hardline communists were basically trying to put him to bed before he put the Soviet Union to bed. And I'm like, why are the Russian tanks shelling the Russian buildings and marching through the streets and arresting the president? And he said, because Gorbachev is trying to make Russia more like America and give them trials, etc. And he said, never trust the Russians to liberate you from anything, or the devil would have his due. And with Jews, the devil is really, really small to non existent. So for him to say that, he was driving home a point.
And they
There
were
were trade
spreading
unions
those
to be
ideas
smashed
of Russian
because
world,
unions were organized and
of,
might offer resistance. There were many political parties in Germany. These the Nazis destroyed. They were determined to smash every organization where people might band together and resist them. There were Jews to be beaten and killed. The Jews were not powerful, but they were a convenient excuse for all the nation's ills. And besides, a Nazi party member could not take over this man's stall. Hundreds of Catholics were put in jail because the Catholic Church had strength and could resist the Nazi drive for power. They had split the nation into 100 pieces, and then one by one, they had destroyed the pieces. Over these broken pieces, the Nazis rode into power. One party, one nation, one religion.
Ein Volk, ein Wagen, ein Volkswagen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's that slogan seems to be reused quite a lot.
And they were spreading those ideas of Russian world, of I don't know, Ukrainian inferiority, Russian superiority, and that we all belong to Tsar and shit like that. And they were spreading those ideas of Russian world, and they were spread, and they.
Oh wait.
That is the flag of Novorossiya, so-called terrorist organization that was created basically by Russians, and that is a terrorist flag. It's illegal even to have. It's like having a flag of ISIS.
I accidentally lost that clip, but Operator Starsky was going to be reading the one nation, one religion, one leader thing that the Russians were using, virtually word for word. And that flag there of Novorossiya, you notice it looks a lot like an American Confederate flag? And that's not any coincidence.
You mean the traitor's flag?
The traitor's flag. Yep.
Let's just call it what it is.
And in Germany, since the World War II bad guy, well, we already said Nazi so many times here, the Nazi flag is illegal. You'll get arrested for having it. So instead, the Nazis used the traitor flag of the Confederacy. Now, interestingly enough, there is a flag of the Confederacy that was not that orange with the bars. That was actually the battle flag that they wound up using. So you don't even have that excuse. And that particular conflict, it literally was about owning other human beings. There's no other way it can be dressed up. Because what's the only thing you could have in the South that you couldn't have in the North? Either it was illegal, not commercially viable, or no one would do business with you with slavery. That was the only thing. They had fried chicken, ma pa, apple pie, and guns in the North and the South.
At home.
Oh, wait.
These men had won their struggle for power. They now ruled all of Germany. But still they had trouble with their oldest and most persistent enemy, the truth. They found that truth does not die easily, and so they decided to abolish truth. One great source of truth is literature, so they burned books. 20 million.
Home. The state.
There were trade unions to be smashed, because unions were organized and might.
What I was going to go on about with that was I'm going to play a clip of Donald Trump promising to smash anyone who resists him. Now, when I was growing up, right, I had all these conspiracies about the CIA and blah, 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 shouldn't be trusted. Then I wound up working at defense contractors. I wound up growing out of my conspiracy theories, and I realized most of these people are career people who are here to protect America, and that's why he doesn't like them. They are, when you're a federal employee, your loyalty is not to the president. Your loyalty is the rule of law and the Constitution. That's why presidents cannot fire most employees at will. In fact, it was actually Mayor Daley who made Chicago so corrupt, and this was around the time that Nixon's corruption was happening, that it caused a huge change in the civil service, so that politicians just couldn't fire the employees, because in Chicago especially, the corruption was really, really bad, and that actually helped reduce the amount of corruption, because then employees could pretty much follow the law without worrying they were going to be sacked for doing the right thing.
At home.
Oh, that's good.
The State Department, the defense bureaucracy, the intelligence services, and all of the rest need to be completely overhauled and reconstituted to fire the deep staters and put America first. We have to put America first. Finally, we have to finish the process we began under my administration of fundamentally reevaluating NATO's purpose and NATO's mission. Our foreign policy establishment keeps trying to pull the world into conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. But the greatest threat to Western civilization today is not Russia. It's probably, more than anything else, ourselves and some of the horrible USA-hating people that represent us.
Yeah, you basically called Vladimir Putin a genius when he invaded Ukraine. And just before the stream started, I found out he's having a little love affair with God, the guy from Hungary. Name's on the tip of my tongue. Viktor Orban, who said that he was Putin's Trojan horse in Europe. So we're having the quote unquote head of the party of the Lord who enjoys calling people communists, praising the Russian dictator for sending the Red Army into Ukraine. And he's petting Viktor Orban, who openly flirts with Nazis. Well, Trump also does too.
Yeah, and yeah, and like the bit you showed, like from the Nazis burning the books. Wait, what's America doing? Well, they're not technically not burning them, but at least taking them out of schools.
Yeah, that kind of is stupid. They're saying parental bill of rights. Parents need to find out what their kids are reading. They're taking the book 1984 out of public schools and calling it communist. It's literally anti-communist.
Yeah, no,
This is not a bill about taking, books which deal with sexuality, even though like books for kids in that regard should be available upon request, but the kids should be requesting them themselves. But they're taking all the good books, like the ones that Orwell wrote, the ones that cause you to think.
Yeah, all what they're taking away is the books that show what actual fascism is. Because if you don't know what fascism is, then you cannot recognize that Trump is one. And the video that I just referenced earlier, I recognize the frame on the video of Trump that you showed comes from the same YouTuber. So
yeah, that's Midas Touch, and I'm not using their commentary. I'm just using the video that they got from somewhere else, so it should be fine.
Yeah, no, but like I just noticed that was from the same YouTuber that also covered, like the guy that live on stream realized that he was the mark.
And it's good again when anyone realizes that they're being taken advantage of. Then we can get the amount of crazy down.
Yeah.
And one of the things is they're winding up waging war on truth.
Yep.
Now, when Barack Obama became president, I already knew that he said that JC died for his sins. And yet they were screaming at him that he was a Muslim. And Muslims do not believe that JC ever died. And in the Quran, the Muslims believe the Quran, and the Quran says that basically after the Dajjal is defeated, then people will go up to Jesus and ask him to forgive them for their sins, and Jesus will point them to Muhammad. So the fact that Barack Obama said that he asked JC to forgive him for his sins means he isn't a Muslim, but they were just screaming that because that's what they wanted to believe. Every Democrat who was new to the system, almost every Democrat who was new to the system that was elected in 2006 and in 2008, almost every single one of them was socially conservative, yet extremely politically liberal, like Bernie Sanders, which is what the preachers were clamoring for in 2004. And there's a rhyme that goes on with a book that was basically if I remember correctly, this is so many years ago, written by T.M. Moore. There's a 2004 version, which is really hard to get, and a 2007 version, which is easier because he corrected it. But it comes with a little rhyme. There once was a preacher by the name of T.M. Moore who wrote a book back in 2004. 4 years later, the black guy he hated came more highly rated by T.M. Moore just 4 years before. And literally, the Democrats did just about everything they could to appease these people. They stuck their fingers in their ears. They declared everything that Kennedy and Johnson did with the blessings of the churches during the deepest, darkest days of the Cold War, communism and socialism. They've dehumanized half the country. The young folks have walked away from the religion that has basically dehumanized them and subjected them to hate because they love their neighbors as themselves. It's just sad.
Yeah.
These men had won their struggle for power. They now ruled all of Germany. But still they had trouble with their oldest and most persistent enemy, the truth. They found that truth does not die easily, and so they decided to abolish truth. One great source of truth is literature, so they burned books, 20 million of them. Many great men in Germany who were spokesmen for truth were jailed or driven from their country. Teachers, writers, scientists. Education was discouraged. In 5 years, college attendance dropped 53%. It was forbidden to listen to a British radio program or read an American newspaper. In Nazi Germany, you had to get your information from Dr. Goebbels. He knew what was best for you. You couldn't see this movie or listen to this music. And you couldn't watch Joe Louis fight because the champion had black skin. He disproved Hitler's theory of Nordic supremacy. Albert Einstein, one of the world's great scientists, disproved that theory too. He was non-Aryan, so he had to leave Germany. His mind was dedicated to the search for truth, and the Nazis, having sold a lie, were most afraid of truth. The church was one force in Germany still strong enough to proclaim the truth in public.
And there were preachers who did, and they paid the ultimate price. And, you know, they should be considered amongst the honored dead, because, you know, when someone gives their life for something they believe, whether or not you believe that there is a God, especially if they're giving their life to try to stop Hitler's bullshit, their name should be remembered. And today, we're dealing with false prophets who are, their brains are so filled with, well, I guess this started, hate. But in 1976, Pat Robertson went to the Republican National Convention, and he said political activism was a work of the gospel, and the gospel is a plan to save our nation. Since when did Jesus command his followers to take over the government using intrigue and bullshit? I thought the gospel was about Jesus died for sin. You accept him, you go to heaven, you reject him. This is what the Christians say, or you go to the bad place. It said nothing about spreading political BS.
No.
And that's, as an atheist, is that one of the things that bugs you the most about Christianity? How it's abused by people and it doesn't really live up to what it should?
Yeah, like And like from like what I've read and heard, and like because I've been raised religious, but like yeah, it's just a lot of contradictions and a lot of things that are in the Bible that you can't read in a different way, just promote bad things like slavery. But like there's a lot of people that take the good things out of the Bible and use that, and not just the Bible or all other religions. You know, it's like there's a lot of very loving Muslims and and Jews and Christians, and yeah, but there's especially the extremists that like yeah there are a couple of extreme churches that yeah, and you got them in every religion.
You know, if I ever ran for office and I had evangelical preachers attacking me, they'd basically be attacking me for wanting to subsidize school lunches for financially disadvantaged kids, because that's what this is all about. Bob Casey, former senator from Pennsylvania, I know he was governor. He wound up basically checking every box the social conservatives have, but he would subsidize school lunches for poor children, and he was basically a Democrat socioeconomically. When the Republicans wanted his seat, they were like, Bob, you're a communist, you're a socialist, you're a Nazi, be gone. And he was the exact opposite of all the kind of shitheadery that they labeled him. And it basically showed anyone who held the social conservative positions, but also liberal economic positions, that being around these people was basically a fool's errand. They were unreasonable. And I'm not saying being crappy to people or using the government to tell them how to live their lives is okay. I'm saying that even when people agreed with them, they would go out of their way to be disagreeable just for the conflict.
Yeah.
I was involved in the Democrats' outreach to the evangelicals. That's how I know so much about this. There was a preacher up in Cleveland. He had the chairman of Chick-fil-A over about 2 weeks before Chick-fil-A decided to be crappy to the LGBTQ community. And the preacher was like, name's Alistair Begg. He was like, don't make this an issue this year because both people are trying to manipulate, both sides are manipulating us. So I do some little phone calls and I find out the Chick-fil-A chairman did that because he wanted Democrats to be mean to Christians, because if Christians didn't feel persecuted, Mitt Romney would lose. That's how shitty and manipulative these preachers in America are, and they use religion. Now let's go to Robin Bollocks, because he's going to give a shout out to the one who I think he serves, and then he's going to prophesy for Vladimir Putin.
It is the fools that will fall. Remember this, because this is the night of Nabal's feasting. This is the time of his feasting. Well, eat up, slurp it down, Nabal, because this prophecy that he gave me on May 19th, 2022, and this is what the Lord has said. And now I come to you, Vladimir Putin. I will use you as my battle axe. Right now, my eagle is being held captive. And yet I am going to free it, says the Lord, before the winter, so that the bear can hibernate again. Be at peace now, for you are not guilty in this action. You and I both know this. Do not let them push you into a rage and become guilty.
Yeah. You notice how well that worked out, right?
Yeah.
He was hoping that the inflation and all that stuff would just cause a red wave that never came. And from what I understand, the Ukrainians are really close to basically breaking through. And then it's like D-Day, they started this. The Ukrainians started the real push. And mid to late August in World War II, they had the breakthrough. So hopefully we'll be to Mariupol soon. I'm just noticing those little timing things, whether or not it's fate or whether or not it's the design of the Ukrainian armed forces. Let's just wish them all well.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to give a little bit of a history on FSB types and KGB types. Operator Starsky says they're not very religious, but they are superstitious. And Elena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, that's Russian, right? The FSB types and the KGB types are just full of her nonsense. And this was General Flynn, who's hugely influential in evangelical circles.
Mighty I am present. I am here, O God, and I am the instrument of those sevenfold rays and archangels.
We are your instrument of those sevenfold rays and all your archangels, all of them.
And I will not retreat. I will take my stand. I will not fear to speak, and I will be the instrument of God's will, whatever it is.
We will not retreat. We will not retreat. We will stand our ground. We will not fear to speak. We will be the instrument of your will, whatever it is.
Here I am, so help me God, in the name of Archangel Michael and his legions. I am freeborn, and I shall remain freeborn, and I shall not be enslaved by any foe within or without.
In your name, and the name of your legions, we are freeborn, and we shall remain freeborn. And we shall not be enslaved by any foe, within or without. So help me God. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you very much.
I think that last dude has seen the other video. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually think he's been sucked into a cult. And I had to wind up deciding what I was going to put in for time. But Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, Paula White, endorsed Mother Moon of the Mooney cult. Literally a woman who says she's a spirit of God, that her husband is the Korean version of the reincarnated Jesus who died, but he's coming back a third time. Really, he is. And they have the Bullet Church of the Moonies. And Mike Pence also endorsed her. So the weird cult shit is just throughout the party of the Lord. And maybe that's why the Christianity ain't spreading it like it should. Well, if you want it to spread, I guess. I'm talking to any religious people who tend to watch this because I do want to be respectful. And my problems are with the shitheads who manipulate and hate everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, as I
No
said, like,
doubt
take
is
the good
possible.
things.
Finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, as I said, like, if you take the good things from the Bible and use that to as a guideline to be a good person, if that helps you, if feeling that you are going to heaven if you die and see your loved ones again, like, if that gives you comfort, like, why would I object to that? Why would I object to somebody finding comfort in their religion, as long as they don't force it on other people or use it to hurt other people?
And also, here's the thing about freedom of religion. What happens if Mike Flynn decides, these people take over, right? And all of a sudden, the people who endorse Mother Moon or the people who are parroting crap from Theosophy, and wherever Theosophy is towards the levers of power anywhere, you're probably looking at the FSB KGB types having something to do with it, because like there was this guy in Boyartia. He was going to lead an exorcism to get rid of Vladimir Putin. He was marching down the highway. He only got maybe a quarter of the way there before he was arrested, but he was going to initiate this pagan ceremony. Putin claims to be a Christian. Why is he afraid of a pagan ceremony to exorcise him? Because he's not a Christian, he's the FSB type, and he is extremely superstitious. And I'm just saying that for any religious folks who are going to see this, who might, well, if they made it this far, they're probably not really into the Russian stuff.
Doubt is possible that we Christians are in a grave battle. Against us stands a faith out of blood. The battle signals range from cool repudiation to hate-filled causes. Weapons are used that centuries have dulled. The aim of this battle is to dislodge Christianity from our fatherland.
This Catholic priest was arrested the following day on charges of immorality. The Protestant Church also continued to try and fight for truth.
He who desires liberty for himself cannot deny it to others, lest he lose what he has gained. This is the great lesson the world can learn from Germany.
The Nazis put this man in a concentration camp.
Let's remember those people. And there was this guy, Gerhard Kittel. He wrote the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. And no one knew the raging anti-Semitism inside of him. And this was like the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament is one of the finest works of the first quarter of the 20th century as far as Christian academic literature. And no one knew how evil he was. And then he wrote The Jewish Question and basically used religion to justify murdering people for no damn good reason. And a lot of the accusations that he made are identical to the accusations that the people who are the moral crusaders in America are making about the people that they hate. I'm not going to list those accusations because the algorithm knows about don't be a sucker, but it doesn't know about my voice. So
There were others who spoke for truth And I am proud to say that educators were among them.
And what, may I ask, is an Aryan? I don't know myself. But let us see what our present so-called authorities have to say about it. They say he is tall, slender, blue-eyed, and blonde. There is no Aryan race. And more important, there is no master race. There are people who may find these ideas convenient, but science cannot support them. There is no scientific proof that there's any correlation between a man's racial characteristics and his native ability or character. In all racial groups, we find the same range of potentialities. We find idiots and geniuses. We find criminals and philanthropists. We must judge each man as an individual and not by the color of his skin or his eyes or by the length of his nose. Come in, gentlemen. Make yourselves comfortable. There are many differences between individuals. We each have different capabilities, different backgrounds, different views about what's right and what's wrong. Like the difference between me and these gentlemen who have just arrived. But that is not the difference in race. It is a difference in the way we think. Remember that. And remember that there is no master race. That is a scientific truth. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
And so for all practical purposes, truth had been abolished in Germany. A lot of my German friends wondered what had hid them. How did it happen? Where did it start? It started right here. And this was where it could have been stopped. If those people had stood together, if they had protected each other, they could have resisted the Nazi threat. Together they would have been strong. But once they allowed themselves to be split apart, they were helpless. When that first minority lost out, everybody lost out. They made the mistake of gambling with other people's freedom. Now let's see how those bets paid off.
Not very well.
Yeah.
And we're going to be going over some modern day statistics as to how well similar bets have paid off. But I do want to answer someone who wrote that his uncle was in a Nazi POW camp, a concentration camp. Yeah. In psychology, there's something called the Lucifer effect. Basically, people become acclimated to evil. They don't start out sociopathic monsters. They just get more and more used to evil. It's a real thing in psychology. And there's about 15 to 20% of the population that gets its morality from the rest of the population. Those will be the people to push it further. Those are the people who cannot have empathy, sympathy, or pity. These are the sociopaths and these are the psychopaths. They have problems empathizing. They can function in society and they do good work like as CEOs because they can make ruthless decisions that I could not make. But you shouldn't have men like that anywhere near the levers of government power. you wind up with Hitler, you wind up with Stalin. Now, Donald Trump said he never asked the JC for forgiveness for his sins, and he didn't bring God in that picture, and he never shows remorse for anything. And I always find it fascinating that these people who pride themselves on their religion so much still call him one of them when literally he's a sociopath. He cannot show remorse for anything that he does. He doesn't have it. He might get upset when he gets his hand caught in a cookie jar, but that's not because he's sad about it.
Yeah. And then he gets a mugshot taken where he looks like a 2-year-old that got told he can't have candy before dinner. That's the way you just described him. Just completely fits that mugshot, in my opinion.
I'm trying to think of. God, I was gonna say something. It will come to me, but oh yeah, Rand's books. It was William F. Buckley. He was talking with might have been Brokaw or it might have been one of the old guys. 2003 interview. He's talking about a review of Atlas Shrugged that Whittaker Chambers did in the National Review. Now, this is a conservative talking about, just say, I can see where this might lead. Go to the Chambers Go. Buckley was talking about how Whittaker Chambers came to that conclusion after such tight reasoning because of Rand's sense of scorn for altruism and charity would lead to an unfeeling system. And whenever we have empathy or sympathy or pity for the marginalized in society, we get called woke. It's becoming less about more questionable things and more about just a cult thought stopping technique that they use to shut off the empathy. I wish that my next stream I'm going to do on Russian propaganda. And that I'm going to show how these people are getting on a plane to leave Russia. This is actual Russian propaganda. And they're coming to America and they're happy. And then they sit next to this pretty lady. And then she says, you're going to love coming to America. And then the big fat macho lesbian sits next to them. And then they get told that they can't eat meat in front of someone because it offends them. And then they try to go to the bathroom. And they're made to bow down to a black man. And that's what Putin is actually painting America as, this hyper woke. And none of us ever live our lives like, well, you might run into lesbians, but no one actually ever orders me to not eat my hamburger. And I've never had to bow to anyone to go to the bathroom. But that's kind of the thing. Using the woke is a thing in Russian propaganda.
Karl the farmer was gambling on a better life for himself. What he got was extra hours of back-breaking work, as much as 100 hours a week. He was forced to stay on his land and produce what he was told to produce, because now Hitler was preparing for war. For Heinrich, who owned a hardware store, the bet didn't pay off either. 104,000 small businesses were closed in 2 years. And for Hans, conditions hadn't improved any. He had a job now in the munitions factory, but he worked long hours for little pay. The working conditions grew increasingly bad. And even though he didn't like the job, he wasn't permitted to leave it. There still wasn't enough food in his house. Hitler said you couldn't have butter and cannon. So Hans couldn't have butter. And when Hitler decided the time was right, Germany went to war. Not by declaring war, but by a carefully prepared sneak attack. Once again, Hitler needed Hans to do his dirty work. Hans was an expert at brutality by this time, and Hitler had decided to use Hans and his brutality against other peoples, the Czechs, the Poles, the French, the Russians.
And here's how the modern day equivalent of that is. And we're going back to the Lucifer effect because they made German society more and more cruel as time goes on. So as of today, there's 264,060 suckers. 570 suckers were dispatched today. There's 4,071 tanks thus far have been destroyed because, you know, the Red Army was superior. Close to 8,700 armored vehicles, 5,560 artillery pieces, 736 mobile rocket launchers, 501 anti-aircraft positions, 315 aircraft, 316 helicopters, almost 4,500 drones. They basically depleted all of their expensive missiles. 18 ships, more than 8,000 vehicles, and close to 850 special equipment. This is what that delusion will do to you. Now they're still dangerous because of their propaganda, and they still have the potential next year if they get any of the Republicans except for Christie and possibly, well, he's the only one that I'm pretty sure, you know, at least 70% sure wouldn't wouldn't destroy NATO, but I have very little confidence in that crew. What do you think, Brainless Steel?
I have no idea that I think at the moment, like, if in politics you've got two choices, you got fascist money grabbers or regular money grabbers.
Yeah, let's go with the normal money grabbers.
But in the crucial test of war, Hitler's race theories didn't pay off. His pure-blooded supermen were defeated by the mongrel armies he despised. By the British at El Alamein. By the Russians at Stalingrad. And then on D-Day by American soldiers of every color and religion, who smashed across the Normandy beaches and drove on through to the heart of Germany. For the misguided Germans who had swallowed the Nazi bait, the Nazi game did not pay off. The continent of Europe was strewn with millions of German bodies, pure Aryan bodies. Karl, the farmer, was left in the snow outside of Moscow. Heinrich stayed in Italy at Salerno. And Hans, who was going to rule the world, got only a little patch of Normandy that he could call his own.
and they were spreading those ideas of Russian world, of I don't know, Ukrainian inferiority, Russian superiority, and that we all belong to Tsar and shit like that.
I knew he'd probably approve of that ending.
We must never let that happen to us or to our country. We must never let ourselves be divided by race or color or religion, because in this country we all belong to minority groups. I was born in Hungary. You are a Mason. These are minorities. And then you belong to other minority groups too. You are a farmer. You have blue eyes. You go to the Methodist Church. Your right to belong to these minorities is a precious thing. You have a right to be what you are and say what you think, because here we have personal freedom. We have liberty. And these are not just fancy words. This is a practical and priceless way of living. But we must work at it. We must guard everyone's liberty, or we can lose our own. If we allow any minority to lose its freedom by persecution or by prejudice, we are threatening our own freedom. And this is not simply an ideal. This is good, hard common sense. You see, here in America is not a question whether we tolerate minorities. America is minorities. And that means you and me. So let's not be suckers. We must not allow the freedom or dignity of any man to be threatened by any act or word. Let's be selfish about it. Let's forget about we and they. Let's think about us.
And that's the end.
Yeah, I think that they should be showing this on television in America, like every hour.
Oh, yeah. In fact, they should be showing a lot of our history that they don't show. And there really is a danger of losing it and a danger of America going down that road. It was right when all the bullshit with Russia invading Ukraine happened. Candace Owens talked about how America should invade Canada and Australia to liberate it from Nazis. So
Where are
Candace,
those Nazis then?
I think they're hanging out with Nick Fuentes and Kanye and Trump and
Oh yeah,
Candace. Yes, they're hanging out with the persons. In other words, he who smelt it dealt it. He who denied it supplied it. That's usually the way it works.
Oh no, I'm proud of my farts.
No. I mean,
Yeah, no, I know.
he who basically screams Nazi without evidence is probably, well, in this case, like with Putin, right? He's like, we invade country with popularly elected Jewish president because overrun by World War II bad guys. Yet popularly elected Jewish president.
Typically hates Jewish people. So the country with the Jewish president is probably a Nazi country.
It makes perfect nonsense. But who cares when I have a clip of Dugan that I'm going to be using for the next stream. He's talking about our reality is defined simply by what we believe. So if we want to believe something, therefore it becomes true.
Wait, what?
This is the genius Dugan. He's basically saying, live in the land of fake belief. It's better. The land of reality may be scarier, but if you live in it long enough, you'll make it better. It's really not so horrible in reality.
Oh, if you got good friends and you all try your best to make it better, And eventually it will get better. And I've got awesome friends that are all trying to make the world a little better in their own ways. So, woohoo!
You have to try. Many on, you grew up religious. So let me put it this way as closing, because you need to learn from Germany. Many on that day will say, Lord, Lord, were we not shitheads in your name? And did we not kill people and hate people? And if you believe that he is real, he's basically going to say, yep, sure you did, depart. So, you know, learn how to love your neighbor as yourself, and the rest should follow suit. You're never
Yeah,
going to
and
get people into your churches by being jerks to everyone.
No, and that's also like the thing that I think that is the best thing that is in the Bible. Love your neighbor as yourself. Like, and like, don't do to others what you don't want to happen to you. If we all just take those few words from the Bible and use that in our lives, like, damn, what would the world be a better place?
If they did that, then the Nazis would have never risen to power.
Yeah.
Everyone have a great night, and thank you for coming. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, and Vila and me are probably gonna head to bed really quickly because it's late, right, sister?